that is one of our top stories this morning, and I'm very glad to be joined by Ledama Olekina. He is the Narok Senator. Thank you very much for your time. Karibu News Centre.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, Betty.
Oh, Betty, sorry.
Yes, it's okay. All right, so there's a lot of issues really surrounding the Mau evictions. I mean, the public is being treated to a lot of politics. We've seen you on very many shows, talking about, this particular issue. Where we are right now, are we making any progress?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I actually want to comment on the issues which are happening right now in terms of what the government is doing. The government is keeping to the promise that we, as a current generation, must keep for the future generation. We must preserve our environment. And I think there's a lot of politics around, but the truth is these people have encroached into the environment, into the forest, and they have to live. That's the bottom line.
And how about the way in which they are being asked to live? Many people are saying it's very inhumane. Isn't there a better way to do this?
Defining humane. I mean, yesterday someone asked a very important question in a different show and said, if I come into your home now and I excise part of your land, for you to move me out of there, you know very well that I'm illegal. I've been there. So the issue is these people have been asked for so many years to move out, and they've completely disregarded the rule of law. If they are talking about having acquired this property through a willing buyer, willing seller, the law protects it, and we have to be very, very clear. Article 40, subsection 6 of the Constitution is very clear. That right does not extend in any property that was illegally acquired. So when Murkomen goes out there and say that this was, the Maasai sold that land, if the land was sold, hypothetically, if the Maasai sold the land, but that land was actually not there, these people have recourse. They can go back to court. Whenever you do a transaction, you have to have a sale agreement. And that sale agreement should be able to protect you. So if there's anything wrong, follow the person who sold you land.
I want us to talk about the three different groups of people in that forest. So of course you have the squatters. You have people who say that they have, the title deeds legally acquired. And there are people who do not have legal title deeds, fake title deeds, just to talk about that. How do you then deal with all these groups of people?
First of all, the people who purportedly have genuine titles, it's imperative that those titles are confirmed. And I think the government is moving in the right direction. I know the county commissioner, Natembeya, has clearly stated that if you so believe that you have a genuine title, bring it for verification. This all nonsense of a cut line. There's no cut line. It is very, very clear. It is that these people bought, if they bought land, I'm still saying hypothetically, if they bought land from the group ranches are very clear on the size. But if you now extend that land and say this is still part of this group ranch, in fact, the person who sold you that land can actually be prosecuted for obtaining money under false pretense. So that property was never there. So you can be able to pursue. You cannot come and say, I don't have the title, I don't have the agreement. You did. If you bought land, there are processes that are followed in this country for you to buy land. You go to the registrar of lands, you pay a particular fee for the district surveyor, you pay some taxes in terms of that. So there's a process. You cannot just come and say, here's my 100,000 shillings, give me land, and then I go and transfer the title for you. There is a process that is followed. And the government is very good in keeping records. I would actually assume that. So we can be able to pursue. So that is in the person who has a title.
A title deed.
So if you have a title, let us verify, first of all, that that title is actually good. You could find that there are some maybe private individual who sold land. Maybe one big family had a lot of land and they sold. I know particularly of a place called Sierra Leone, where there are soldiers who came back from Sierra Leone. Some of them genuinely bought land, and they were sold land from the group ranches. Let us verify that. But now, because of our most important need to preserve this environment for future generation, we can relocate those people. They can be recompensated.
Is there any consideration that's going to be done for the squatters? Because these are families, there are children in there who've lived there for so many years. Is there any consideration, even though they were not supposed to be there in the first place?
You know, Betty, when you're born somewhere. If today you decide that you're going to become a squatter in KTN, that's your own prerogative. You need to be able to go back where you came from. You didn't just fall from the sky all the way down. If you're a squatter, where did you come from? Okay? There's a big problem in this country, and I cannot be oblivious to that fact, that there are those people who have acquired so much land, they have immersed so much land, and then this concept of land ownership, it is not something which is domiciled in every culture. In the Maasai community, for instance, we don't really understand this concept of title deeds. It just came in recently, you know, and when I say recently, maybe from the 70s.
Yeah.
But there are people who have, and even 80s or 90s, there's still people who do not understand anything about the title deeds. So if you're a squatter, because I know this is a problem countrywide, the government ought to look into it. And I've given the government a very good suggestion. The government, in one of the 4 pillars of development of Jubilee, they're going to build affordable houses. Get some land, build those affordable houses, move that entire population there. I'm sure the government has got land which is not forest reserve. They can be able to be moved there.
They can do that.
Yes.
So then what happens to all these political voices? I mean, just in that story that we've highlighted, Kipchumba Murkomen saying something totally different, saying that, these families should stay put. So why all this politicking?
You will understand the issue of politics, because as a politician, you'd want to play populist politics.
Right.
Because sometimes Kenyans forget, but mostly when it comes to their basic needs, they don't forget. So when it comes to the next election, someone will say, "Huyu alisimama na sisi." So let us support that person. So there's an issue of populist politics. But the Mau Forest, we cannot play populist politics. There are so many issues around the Nyao T-zone, which was a state corporation, okay, as a system of preservation of the forest. But that should not justify people saying that that is a cut line. Now, there's an issue in this country that whenever we do something wrong, we retreat back to our tribal cocoons. That should not be the remedy.
Right.
What we should be talking about, Betty, is now you. And yesterday I gave a very good quote, and I hope, and I will repeat it here.
Yes.
That there's a guy called Herbert Hughes who said that man is a very insane being. He worships a God that he has never seen, destroys an environment that is visible, forgetting that that environment is a God that he worships. Our life here is not permanent. We are just passing through.
Right.
So we have to be able to put that responsibility or that, what do you call it? That need to be able to preserve this environment for future generations.
Interesting. Coming to that issue to do with the cut line, I mean, in that particular area, we understand that there are schools that were built. So who built these schools? If the government now is coming to say it's time to move away from this place.
Let me ask you, and somebody asked this question yesterday on Twitter. Were there schools which were built by the government in Kibera?
Well, there were schools there.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the place where
the place which was demolished?
There was
were there some schools which were demolished?
Yes.
So if something was wrong in the first place, it could have been an issue of complicity. You know this government, each subsequent government, when it's in place, people always say, tuko serikali.
Yeah.
So someone can come out there and say, I need money to go and build a school in this area.
Right.
But then where they build a school is not where it's gazetted. We have these problems of schools countrywide. You tell me, the other day we're meeting with the CS Amina in the Committee on CPIC in the Senate, trying to delve into this issue of Ruaraka, the school in Ruaraka, which was, allegedly built in some private land. This could be the same thing. Someone just goes there somewhere, identify a site, put up a structure there and say this is a school. It doesn't make it right. So if the government had a good intention of building a school, they delivered the money. But quite seldom do you see government officials going out there and saying, here's a title deed for this parcel of land. It has gone through due process of the law. So there's, so someone, that is not something that we should even worry about. There's no justification.
But also looking at the humanitarian angle really fine. So there is, this school that was built. People are obviously, settled around this school. So that's what I'm talking about. Don't you think that these people, fine, you say that, mistakes can be committed, but then don't you think that it's also the responsibility of the government to ensure that these people who were able to settle around these schools are taken care of?
I think the government, and this is why we talk about devolution. And I would probably say our local government, or rather the county government of Narok failed in ensuring that there is no fiduciary risk, because that's a lot of money which is being wasted now, in the sense that those schools will be demolished for the conservation. It is also there is also an interest and a need by the government to be able to protect its citizens. So those two things conflict, because if you come now and tell me that the registrar of lands gave a title deed and say, here's a site, go build a school, then we can have that discussion on what the government responsibility ought to be. You know very well that for any development to spur, all you need to do is put up either a settlement somewhere, and then what will follow? A school will follow.
Yes.
Maybe then if the government really cares and say there are people here, a hospital will follow.
Yes.
So things will come in subsequently, but that doesn't make it right.
Interesting. I want also to discuss, I mean, you are the Narok senator, you have the history of this particular region.
Yes, I do.
Do you think that this time round we're getting it right? Because it's a cycle, and it's almost like 5 years we talk about this, we talk about Mau evictions. Do you think that this time round it's actually going to happen and to come to a conclusion? I'm
convinced, Betty, that we are going to be able to conclude. When I look at the history of the world, Martin Luther King had a dream, and Barack Obama fulfilled that dream. Olenti Mama had a dream of making sure that everyone lives Narok, the Maasai Mau forest. Ledamo Lekine, as a senator, will strive to ensure that he fulfill that dream. It behooves us as leaders to ensure that we preserve this environment for future generations. So I am very, very, very happy. In fact, it's quite seldom that I agree with this government, but now I 100% wholesomely agree with this government that we need to preserve our natural resources.
There is something that came out. There's a petition, of course, to do with this particular case that came into court. And this particular petition is saying that, you know, the people who have ulterior motives to this Mau evictions, that they're senior political figures, like we always call them here in Kenya, who are actually after this particular parcels of land.
Are you sure you want to dwell into that?
Well, I'd like to hear your comment on that.
Let me break it down for you. One, I personally have a case in the Narok Land Court to evict people out of the Mau forest. Okay. I came in as an interested party. This was a case which was filed by a group of Dendorobos who lived in the forest, who were settled there by the government. Because back in 2001, the government excised out some portion of land, which was about 65,000 acres, to settle about 9,000 families of the Dendorobos who lived there. But they did not end up getting all the land. What happened, contrary to that, is that individuals who were ministers in the Moi era, who were, what would you call them, MPs, who were provincial administration, you know, what they say in Swahili, mabwenyenye. They are the ones who ended up getting those portions of land. So this issue of a petition filed recently by them, it is to try to protect their own interests, because these guys have been hiding among the poor people. So they know that once the poor people are evicted, then it will be next. Betty, what I have here is also another case that we filed. And in this case, this is another case which was filed by, I'm not disclose the name, but I'm an interested party in this case as well. And part of this case, it looks at the entire history of the Mau Forest Complex. And a lot of what we've relied on this case has got to do with the Prime Minister Task Force report, which was tabled in Parliament, I think back in 22 or 5 or something like that. But nothing ever happened, you know, because there was a lot of interest. Their names, they're people who, it's not Ledama who put in there, but it's very clear. I can name some people for you. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you go like now from, it says here, prominent government officials and political leaders allocated land in Ngorongoro settlement scheme. Because one of the things that you must understand is that we've got 23 blocks in the Mau. Where there's a lot of encroachment is the Maasai Mau. There's a section called Olpusumoru, which is a complete forest reserve. That one, there were 4 adjudication sections which were declared illegally, and people were allocated land. When you read the names here, and I'm going to read them, okay? You'll find that the first person, Zakayo Cheriot, there, he has 6.3 acres. Hosea Kiplagat, 7.58. Philemon Komen Chelangat, 8 acres. Kinuthi Ambogwa, Francis Sigei, Alexander Sawe, Solomon Sirma, Mohammed Yusufaji, who is currently the senator. You say John Locorio. These are names who are very serious in this government. Then you proceed. You get Edward Sambili. You come in, you say Musa Sirma, Chelimo Cheboy, John Mark, you go John Makiboit Moi, you go to Daniel, I think the name is Cameron. These are names, people who are acquired. They are companies that are acquired. And when you go, there's a guy called Sammy Mwita. In fact, yesterday he called me. He's a good friend of mine. He called me. He was a former land commissioner. And what this guy did, in some other blocks, apart from the apart from the Maasai Mao, in the other blocks where the adjudication was done illegally, this guy took land. And what he did is that because he was one of the guys who was allocating land as a land commissioner, because he subsequently became a member of parliament for Baringo, what he did is that according to the Prime Minister's Task Force report, this is not my words, these are facts, and you know facts are very stubborn. What he did is that he used his name in 5 different times. Sami Komen Mwita, Sami Mwita, S. Mwita. All that stuff, the same ID number to allocate himself land. And yesterday he called me, he told me that he had told the Prime Minister that he only owns 56 acres in the forest. You shouldn't even own even an acre.
Exactly.
This report says he has 77 acres. He says it has another 77 acres. So the truth is, there are these guys who are the big shots, who are now seeing that since the government is tackling this, what's we call it? These illegal settlers, or whatever you call them, squatters, these poor people.
So they'll be left exposed.
Next, it will be them. And the other thing, to make it very clear, look at Nairobi, for instance. Everywhere where there is an affluent community, you know, or a suburb, there's a slum next to it.
Yes, yes.
Lavington is one. Next to it, there's Kawangware.
Everywhere.
Or to Karen. So they want these people to be there so that they can be able to work in their illegal tea plantation. They want these people to be there so that they can help them with the logging activities. This is insane, and it's got to stop.
So will it stop? Will we see these people, you know, return this land?
It doesn't matter. This is the kind of commitment that I want to continue, and I want to dedicate my life in, because it is kind of a liberty, you know. We're going to free ourselves from the bondage of a drought, from floods. So this is the kind of liberty that I am prepared to pursue.
Right, and shortly we'll be talking about really the impact of this illegal, you know, settlement on the forest, because I think Kenyans also need to understand just how critical it is, but also let's hope that, you know, the names, you know, the people who have this land, actually, these land parcels, something's going to happen. Because it's the history of Kenya that, you know, we know, but, you know, nothing really.
You see, and I'm not saying that the Maasais are completely innocent in this. Because for me, I believe that the truth shall always set you free. There are some of my brothers who took advantage of this. There are some prominent families that took advantage of this. You know, they benefited from this illegality, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't matter who you are, Maasai or Kalenjin. The fact that you've destroyed this environment, you've got to pay for it. So you cannot hide behind this issue of saying it's a Mao forest, it's a Maasai Mao forest, okay? You are a problem. And we know that there are people who are former councillors in the Narok County Council who are complicit. They have to pay for it. They're former ministers. They have to pay for it.
All right. We'll come back to the discussion. But meanwhile, Kericho Governor Paul Chepkonet went to court to stop the eviction of settlers in Maasai Mara Forest by the government that is currently ongoing. However, the Environment and Lands Court has declined to issue conservatory orders stopping evictions from the Maasai Mara Forest. Instead, Justice Mohammed Kolo called for an inter-party hearing on the 6th of August. We just want to take a look at some of the issues raised by the leader. Let's just take a look at that using some graphics. All right, so part of it says that from the 7th of July 2018, the respondents, without any right of legal authority and in utter disrespect of property rights and human dignity of the petitioner, have illegally and with impunity commenced forceful eviction and alienation of the private owners of individual property of all the land. That's something that Mheshimiwa Nsubi has actually just talked about, that the eviction is being done in the most inhumane manner. The security officers burn houses, livestock and bitter property owners in a brazen display of impunity and high-handedness. If it is scorched earth eviction, it goes on to say that the respondents have all the right to evict persons inside the gazetted Mao forest, but the party's land contained in the said former group ranched is not in the forest. It is several kilometers away from the forest. All right, it says also that private owners have legally been issued with titles to their comprised in the former group ranches, have been authorized by the government of Kenya to subdivide the said group ranches into individual parcels of land. I'd like to hear your remarks on this.
On this issue of, I actually really would like to thank the judge for having considered the environment. The environment is very, very important for our well-being. And one, let's go to the issue of the group ranches. Originally, there were only 5 group ranches.
Yes, yes.
These group ranches were very clear. If you go to the district or to the director of service, you will see the acreages of these group ranches. One thing which Kenyans ought to know is that the group ranches originally were not even group ranches. These are individuals who thought, you know what, let us just come together. From our group ranch and everything. So you'll find that a group ranch like Rayo was probably only 50 acres. Okay? So that was for one person.
Yeah.
Okay? But then, for that now illegality to come in, that one group ranch, which was 50 acres, was extended to almost 800 acres. And then people were given title deeds from the 50 acres to the entire 750 acres. They're illegal. The Constitution is very clear. I've quoted Article 40, subsection 6 of the Constitution. Even though every person has a right to property, and their property is protected, it does not extend to a property which is illegally acquired. That is an illegal acquisition. So what we need to do is to say, these group ranches, what was their size? Because back in 1976, when the Maasai decided to adjudicate on their section of land, these group ranches were very, very clear on the boundaries, how far they extend. One was maybe 500 acres. That for the 500 acres, it extended to about 8,000 hectares. That is where the illegality came in. So what we need to do is to go back and look at the initial records and say, if it is 50 acres, if you've been sold land and you're within the 50 acres, by all means, it's okay. But if you now, because these 50 acres did not extend into the forest. The reason why some of these group ranches vary in sizes is because they are really set up in the line of the forest. So maybe this one, which is 50 acres, maybe the owners could have wanted it to be 100 acres, but there's no way that it could go beyond the 50 acres because of the forest. So that is one thing which is very, very clear. Then there's another section, which was the Olpusumoru. Because when you look at the Mau, for instance, for you to be able to understand, is that when you have the Olpusumoru here and you have the Maasai area here, this is a reserve. Now, this reserve of Olpusumoru, 4 adjudication sections were declared. They are illegal. They are not in any record. Okay, the group ranches are on this side. Okay, so this Maasai Mau is the one which has been fully encroached. And the biggest problem we have is that there are people who believe that there is this issue of cut line. And I want to address this issue of cut line. That cut line is really just abating corruption. It's an illegality. You know, I know as a way of conserving the forest, there was this Nyayo T-zone, which is a state corporation. It was put in there to probably try and put a buffer and to stop these people from coming any further so that they can continue preserving that, that forest. But that does not mean it's a cut line. Yes.
Thank you very much, Senator, for your time. Senator for Narok County, Ledama Olekine, thank you for your time. We'll keep having this discussion and we'll follow up on those names, hopefully.
No, I'm sure you don't want to hear the names, but let me show you some of them. And if you have the guts to name them, especially number 2. Can you name number 2?
All right, we'll do that in another. We'll do that after we make our own verifiable information. Thank you very much after we get the interesting names. All right, thank you for your time, sir.
Really appreciate it.
We'd like to also just hear your thoughts on this one. Chime in. Hashtag is KTN News Centre or at Betty M. Kello. That's my Twitter handle. I'll look at your tweets in a few moments. Just let us know really what your take is on all this. These issues really surrounding the evictions and also the politicking that is currently ongoing. All right, so we'll take a short commercial break. We're coming back to continue with the show. So don't go away. We still have quite a number of other top stories, including the fact that oil operations in the Turkana region, of course, Talo Oil, have come to a stop. Because of insecurity.
And we have a bill in the Senate currently, which is called a local content bill, which if the National Assembly can get its act together, once we send that bill from the Senate and they pass it, we'll stop this nonsense.
All right, we'll be waiting for that.
All right.
All right, so let's take a short commercial break. We'll be back in a few moments.